Hello everyone, thank you for joining this webinar. My name is Richard Marett. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Whizz Education that's been going for 16 years, and in that time we've had the privilege of working with over 1 million children to help them improve their mathematics, and we've had some great success and in the process learned a lot of lessons on the way, and we look forward to sharing some of those with you in this webinar. Just for your awareness, this is a re-recording of the webinar we actually held yesterday. There were some technical issues, so we thought we would do a fresh recording for you. And so I'll be leading it with my expert educator and colleague, Fiona, who will introduce herself now.
Welcome everyone. I'm Fiona Goddard, the Senior Education Consultant at Whizz Education, and I support all of our colleagues, all of our Whizzers and schools in implementing Maths-Whizz and just seeing how they can really integrate it well to maximise its potential. So welcome everyone.
Now in this session, we're going to be introducing Fiona will be introducing some starter tips for home learning, and then we'll be taking it to the next level and talking about how Maths-Whizz can really help your children with their learning development, particularly through school closures and at other times during the year. But before that, we're just going to do a quick intro on the questions we're going to answer in this session, and then give you some background knowledge that we've acquired over the years that you may find really interesting, and it provides us some context for those tips. And then finally, we'll be closing with some actions and key takeaways. All right, let's get started. So two of the questions we're finding as we're interacting with parents during these past few crazy weeks, and it really relates to a level of anxiety we're seeing because parents have their children around them at home like I do, and we're wondering how to engage them, but also how can we make sure they get the continuity of learning and that they're continuing to grow and develop. And it's challenging, and so one of the things I'm expecting out of this webinar for you is to at least provide you some answers to those two questions. So a little bit of interesting background knowledge for you. We work all over the world. We work with schools, with ministries of education to do large deployments, but also primarily with parents, again, all over the world. So one of the things that's given us is exposure to a lot of data and findings. And one of the things I can share with you, for those of you watching who have their children attend school normally, this may not apply to homeschoolers, of course, but for those of you who have children who attend school, we can tell you that consistently what we see is children are in classrooms of mixed ability, and the range of ability in the classroom in which your child attends is almost always 4 years. And it doesn't matter what country you're in, and it doesn't matter if you're attending a private school or a state school. This sort of magic 4-year range of ability we see all the time. And if you think about that, that's an amazing challenge for teachers because they've got to deliver a curriculum for a particular grade and at the same time try and address the needs, the individual learning needs of a group of 30 children in the space of 45 minutes. Well, with the best will in the world, it is very, very difficult to do that consistently. And as a result, learning gaps can develop at any time during the year. And if they're unidentified or ultimately unaddressed, that can have repercussions to your child's learning and development. That challenge is exacerbated by the fact that each child may have different strengths and weaknesses across different topics, even within a subject of mathematics. And sorry, let me be clear, mathematics is our area of speciality. We're really good at helping children get better at maths. So this is a profile that comes out of our data of an actual child we've worked with. Obviously for compliance reasons, we're not sharing any names or personal info. But what you can see here is that this child, this data shows the red lines show where this child was first assessed when we started working with them, and the blue bars represent progress. And as a result, we get something called a maths age, and maths age can be thought of a bit like reading age. It just gives you a rough idea of where the child's at. What's interesting here is that whilst this child was reasonably good at decimals and good at multiplication and division, she had a very, she was struggling with place value. In fact, she was 2 or 3 years behind compared to other topics. Now, I don't know why that is. That could have been for a range of reasons. But we do know that if a child's blockages are not addressed, particularly in a subject like mathematics, it can be very difficult for her to proceed. And ultimately, a misunderstanding in one topic in mathematics can lead to problems in other topics. And ultimately, that can lead to a perception of potentially not being good at mathematics, and that could even affect self-esteem and confidence. And it's totally unnecessary. We can help all our children to get good at mathematics because we are innately good at it as human beings. So, some very interesting findings there. What that means for you as parents is that, do you have a good understanding of where your child's at so that we can support them effectively? And you can get that kind of information to some extent from teachers at schools. There might be assessment data they've got, but it's also something we'll be able to show you how we can help you with. Another key thing I wanted to share with you, another key finding, is about the phenomenon of summer learning loss. In most countries, there is a long break at some point during the year of typically 6 weeks or 8 weeks. And it's fairly well known that learning loss is experienced during that period. We've actually measured that with our data, and we found that it's on average around it's around 2 months nearly. And so what that means is children's mathematics levels, say, for example, in the Northern Hemisphere at the end of June, early July, is 2 months higher than essentially in September, it'll be 2 months lower. They actually regress slightly. But by providing an hour of quality learning in mathematics per week, not only can that be addressed, you can actually reverse that trend and actually have some learning gains. So, for example, children we work with Maths-Whizz, who get 60 minutes a week of access to Maths-Whizz during the summer break, they actually get usually a month and a half of learning gain, sometimes more. So the difference can be 3 to 4 months. It's really, really significant. That's a whole term. That hour of quality learning doesn't have to be in Maths-Whizz. It's just an hour of quality learning. Why is that relevant to us now, since this webinar is being held in early April? Well, with COVID-19, there are a lot of school closures, and schools and teachers are really trying very, very hard, and many are doing a magnificent job of trying to deliver remote learning. The reality is that's a learning experience for all of us. And so there are some risks around learning loss over the coming months. And if school closures continue until the end of June, and then we have the summer learning loss as well, what I'm sharing with you here could have more profound implications on our children. So this is something we're also looking to address and will be covered in the advice in the following 15 minutes. At this point, I'm going to hand over to Fiona just on the starter tips for getting going with home learning. Over to you, Fiona.
Thank you, Richard. Okay, so having to supervise your children full-time at home is challenging. It's not something any of us saw coming, and many of us are frantically trying to put together a home learning plan that works for our children. Now, we've written a blog entitled Getting Started with Home Learning During School Closures, and I'm just going to briefly clarify a few of those tips. Now, with all this uncertainty, where we have more questions than answers, it's important to make opportunities to talk as a family. That might be together or individually. And we really mustn't dismiss our children's concerns and make sure that the information that we do give them is based on facts and age appropriate. We want to be reassuring to them, and even things like finding out how their day was, how they're feeling, all of that is really important for them. And the other thing is about planning in time on a regular basis, and that's quite key, to connect with extended family and friends who are not in your homes at the moment. And that's really important for all of us, because it brings some normality, but it also is going to help with our mental health as well. If we go to the next slide. Thank you. Now, we're all creatures of habits, and establishing a routine is key. We need to give purpose to our day. So creating a schedule with your children can really help with giving a purpose and giving them some guidance. But remember to be flexible. Ideally, you want to include their interests, their personality, and think about their strengths and their weaknesses as well. But remember, we're not trying to recreate a classroom. We're not trying to recreate those lessons, so we need to make sure that our schedule evolves, and really does tailor to their needs. And even just having expectations about getting up, getting dressed, setting times for when you're going to have breaks, downtime, and also rewards. And that's going to really help to motivate them. And as I said, give them purpose. Good, thank you. Now, finally, you need to give yourself some grace. This is going to be an emotional roller coaster with scary moments and times of calm. And we're all in this together. And, try and connect with other parents to offload, to share ideas, and just share that burden that you're all facing at the moment. There's a lot of educational support out there, and that's great, but it can also be very overwhelming. And I would suggest, have a look at that support that's out there, because it's going to give you some sanity and some peace of mind, and it's worth just trying out some of the things that are on offer. But I'm going to hand you back to Richard now, who's going to share with you how Maths-Whizz is an educational resource that can really support you and your child at home.
Fiona's given you some sort of starter basics, if you like. Let's talk about taking this to the next level. And I want to talk to you a little bit about virtual tuition. Now, many of you viewing this are familiar with Whizz Education and have used Maths-Whizz either as parents at home or through your school. But many of you are also new to the work we do. So as part of what Whizz Education has done over the years, we developed the Maths-Whizz virtual tutoring platform. And so even 16 years ago, we started investing in intelligent learning technologies, what are now called adaptive learning technologies, and more recently AI, to simulate the behavior of a private tutor so that a child could log into our platform, have their particular needs, strengths and weaknesses identified, and then delivered learning that's continually adapting as their learning journey continues. So it's not a fixed course of study, rather it's giving the child what they need when they need it, so that they can have the optimal learning experience. And what's really interesting is over the years, we've looked at the data, we've had independent studies, and it turns out if you give your child an hour of individual tutoring a week, whether it's via a private tutor or a virtual tutoring platform like Maths-Whizz, if you give them an hour a week consistently, then over a year, you would on average expect to see 18 months worth of learning progress in that first year. That first year is particularly strong because quite often there are gaps that may not have been picked up and addressed in school. And in mathematics, when you address those gaps, you have a period of accelerated learning. You would still expect to see great progress in years 2 and 3, but ultimately that may plateau. We're not trying to send your child to university at the age of 12. That's not the goal. The goal is to help every child be at their potential at any moment in time. So there are lots and lots of maths websites around the world, in fact, thousands of them. Many very good resource websites, learning content, activities, increasingly adaptive learning experiences. Whizz is a deployer and user of adaptive learning technologies. We use it to simulate the behavior of a private tutor. So think of us as a private tutor that's online, that's a little gamified, that never loses patience with your child, and that can give you data and keep you informed of progress and how they're getting on. So the main thing is, if you can give your child an hour of individualized learning that's supplementary to what they're normally receiving, you can get really, really good results. So let me talk a little bit about the Maths-Whizz Tutor itself. As I mentioned earlier, as you can see from a couple of the images here, we use an engaging learning environment and gamification, and that's it serves two purposes. One, it generates enthusiasm for learning mathematics, and secondly, it actually encourages independent learning. Children we find often want to go onto Maths-Whizz on their own. Yeah, so you don't necessarily need to be present with them. And that has a second benefit for us as parents, is that occasionally we can get a moments of peace while they're actually getting some great learning. But ultimately, behind that engagement is very strong educational experiences, because the tutor targets your child's individual needs. And what I can tell you is every child's profile is different. As I said, we've tutored over 1 million pupils over the years, and we've never seen 2 children with the same profile. It's really quite incredible. So, given time, I'm just going to give you a very, very quick demo. This is going to be a very brief one. There'll be, for those of you who are new to Maths-Whizz, you'll be given the opportunity to go sign up and have a free week trial so that you can actually get more familiar with this. But I just wanted to show you something here around how the tutor not only addresses your child.
From Whizz Rookie to Superstar. Achieve 3 progressions this week to win a gem.
I wanted to show you how not only is there a strong learning journey here, but how it can save you time. So there's various rewards built into Maths-Whizz, but when they want to start their actual learning, you press Let's Go, and you've got an image here of a learning journey. What's really important here is that it looks like the next stage of my learning journey is on this lesson here. I did not choose that as a parent. You do not need to choose that. The Maths-Whizz system, the intelligence behind it, knows where your child's at and makes those decisions for you. And if as a child I'm struggling, help is built in, or the system will take them to an easier level or an alternative lesson or alternative pedagogy. What that means to you is you can sit with your child if you so wish, because it's a great bonding experience, or you can let them get on with learning. That's really the key takeaway I wanted to show you here. I won't actually play a lesson. You can go see a lot of the lessons. There's free samples online at whizz.com. But I will show you some of the other areas that can be done. Your child can add their friends as buddies. They can challenge each other. There's leaderboards, and you can send messages to your child. And let's face it, children love our attention, don't they? So lovely messages goes a long, long way. In addition to that, there are lots of activities to sort of create their own unique environment, their own avatar. I'm in a young imaginary child's place called Amelia, and she's sort of set herself up like this. Again, super popular with children. What this means for you is in the early stages, they may even spend quite a lot of time on Maths-Whizz, and we'll be talking about that in a moment. So let's go to the next thing. Here's a little bit about actually some of the lessons, normally broken up into 3 sections. Interactive tutorials to explain new concepts and sometimes just give a worked example. This is usually followed by interactive exercises where children can engage, get things right, get things wrong, explore, learn. Help is built in. And that's really, really powerful, we found. Over 1,200 lessons with huge amounts of variety. And then finally, the Maths-Whizz system will periodically come up and provide students with tests, because we want your child to make a cognitive connection between concepts that they've experienced in a visual and interactive way with what they may face in a school test. So in that way, Maths-Whizz is preparing your child for success in school. Well, I've told you a little bit about Maths-Whizz and getting that sort of hour of individualized learning. I thought I might just share with you a few seconds from some real children. Just a few seconds. It's a snapshot taken out of some school videos, but they're relevant for this webinar.
In a lesson, like a teacher is just talking directly to a whole class, but when you're on Maths-Whizz, it's like a teacher just talking to you. So it's like your own personal lesson.
Let's face it, he explained it better than I can. Let's hear from these 2 girls, because they're quite funny.
Maths-Whizz is kind of like a teacher because it teaches you things like the teacher, but in an easier way to make you know the method of how to do it. And so when it comes to learning it, you know it in a better way. Yeah.
They're so cute, those two. Anyway, so I hope that sort of, I think they encapsulated what Maths-Whizz, how Maths-Whizz works with children, and can do the same for your child. Right. Whether you are an existing Maths-Whizz user or someone who's hearing about this for the first time, let me give you some key advice for getting the best out of it. This is in some ways the most important part of the second part of this webinar, i.e. the sort of the virtual tutoring type of things. With a virtual tutor like Maths-Whizz, when they first log in, they'll start with an initial assessment. That can take anywhere between 30 minutes to over an hour. They don't have to do it in one sitting. You can stop, everything's saved, and continue at another time. But the key element from a parent perspective is really do try not to help your child. It's important that the system assesses your child's current level of confidence. It doesn't really matter where they start, it's where we take them to that matters. So don't help them. We do not need an inflated view. So ideally you can be in the same room, but don't sit with them, because frankly what your child will do is answer a question and then turn over and look at you in the eye, and your eyes will just tell them whether they got it right or wrong. You can help them with reading and, you know, if any technical issues, but don't help them with the mathematics. Ultimately, in any question during the assessment, there is a don't know button, and if your child's struggling, it is okay for them to click don't know. This is a low pressure initial assessment, so take it easy. Once they've passed the initial assessment, the whole tutoring experience will start, a little bit like we just had a look at. And again, here it's up to you if you'd like to sit with them or not. Maths-Whizz supports independent learning, but it also supports you sitting with your child and having some quality time together. So enjoy yourselves. Right, the next two things I'm going to share with you are the real keys to success. And a little bit like Fiona was saying earlier, creating a routine and a schedule is important for home learning in general, and it's really important for Maths-Whizz. You will get, for most students, for most children, the best results with just scheduling 60 minutes a week. If your child is currently sort of lacking confidence in maths or struggling a little bit, you can go up to 90 minutes a week, but I would refrain from doing any more than that, because what's really important in Maths-Whizz is giving that support, that little and often, on a long-term basis. Now, the one difference with a private tutor is normally a private tutor will come around for one 60-minute session a week. With Maths-Whizz, you can chunk it. So if you wanted to do 10, 15 minutes a day, or 20 minutes 3 or 4 times a week, or a couple of half-an-hour sessions, that's okay. In the follow-up email that you're going to get, we will send you a link to a weekly planner. You can print that out, and with your child, agree what times of the week and when you're going to have the Maths-Whizz time, and then post it up on their wall. They can take ownership of their learning journey with Maths-Whizz. Right. As I mentioned, Maths-Whizz there's an element of gamification in there, and in our experience, when students first start using Maths-Whizz, they're super enthusiastic, and their tendency will actually be to do too much. As strange as it may seem, if you can do it, refrain from them from doing more than 60 or 90 minutes a week, because what will happen, and as the years go by, we're seeing this happen earlier and earlier as children have shorter attention spans. But somewhere normally between within 3 to 6 weeks, the novelty of Maths-Whizz may wear off, and your child may come to you and say, "Mummy, Daddy, I don't want to do it today," or I don't want to do it anymore. It's at that moment that you make it or break it for your child. If you can keep them going for another few weeks, usually 3 to 4 weeks, the routine that you've committed to with your child becomes a habit. And with that habit, they're able to sustain it going forward. And that's where we see the big gains. So whether you need to advise them, provide some rewards, cajole them, sit with them, whatever it takes, keep them going during what we call the 3 to 6 week blues, so that you can turn that quality hour of maths learning a week into a habit. If you can do that, you will see visible progress, not only in the data and reports that you can see as a parent at any time or through the reports we actually send to you, but you'll actually just see it in their confidence. You'll see it in their confidence in mathematics and in themselves, even more so within 6 months. And I can tell you, if you sustain it for a year, within a year, your child's class teacher will notice and probably mention it to you in a parent's evening. What's happened to your child? She or he has blossomed. So that's why creating a routine, managing through the 3 to 6 week blues is actually the key role for you as a parent. And if you can do that, you will be doing your child a tremendous service, because they'll get better and better at maths. Right, your parent account. As parents, you will get your own login. When you first register for Maths-Whizz, you'll put in a username and password and you'll get a parent account. And in there, you can monitor your child's usage, that hour a week, what their maths age, which is always really interesting to know. Don't get too precious about that. Maths age is a little bit like reading age. It just gives you a rough idea of where they're at. But most importantly, you can see how they're progressing. And you can send messages to your child. It's a really good place, and I would encourage you to check in ideally once a week just to check on things. You will also get email updates from Whizz Education, so you are kept informed all the way. And that way you can measure progress. Right, so let's bring this webinar to a close with just some next steps. For those of you who are existing Maths-Whizz users, use those key suggestions I gave you to make sure you create that routine of usage. And for those of you who are new to Maths-Whizz, look, I hope it's become fairly obvious. The thing to do is to get started straight away. There's a 7-day free trial. Go to whizz.com/parents and just sign up. After that week, you will then start off on your paid subscription. Thank you very much for attending the webinar and registering. If you use a voucher code called webinar, you'll get 20% off. Just to give you an idea of the pricing, well, in fact, actually, why don't we just go to it so that you can have a look. So if you click on that, you'll see this is the parent section. Just go sign up and you can pay the £20 a month. When you compare that to a human private tutor, which is these days quite often £50 for an hour, you can get some great value. But the best value is on an annual access, which is £150 for a year of tuition. Apply your voucher code and you'll get 20% off. So it means you're going to get it at £120 for the year. If you're coming in from the US or other countries like Dubai or anywhere else, or the UAE, there are local currency versions. Go to the website, sign up, and you'll see your local currency equivalent. And for that matter, while I'm on it, just so you know, when you're accessing Maths-Whizz, you can choose a curriculum and language version. We obviously don't have every curriculum and every language covered. Do check online when you're signing up. But ultimately, Maths-Whizz doesn't actually follow a curriculum. It doesn't really care what grade your child's in. All Maths-Whizz cares about is where your child is at. What do they understand? What do they need support in? So the curriculum they follow is just your child's curriculum, if you like, and it's constantly adapting. So sign up, then let your child do the initial assessment and you'll find out their maths age. And then most important, apply that weekly schedule. You heard a little bit from Fiona earlier. Do go to the blog on the website, and there's a lot more information on home learning, some of the advice that Fiona gave you, but actually in a bit more detail. And for those of you who are really enthusiastic, there's an 8-page, really colourful guide of home learning and how to deploy Maths-Whizz effectively for that. I'd really encourage you to read it. It's really, really strong. We'll also send a link to that in the follow-up email. And finally, we have a support team and they are really passionate about helping you. So do click support at Whizz Education. So do email support@whizzeducation.com if you have any questions that weren't covered in this. And finally, in your parent login area, there is a little button on the bottom left that is called, we call it Whizz Assist. If you click on that, Our support team will respond to you within 10 seconds typically, and they can help answer questions that you may have, or if you're having any technical issues, they can even take over your screen and fix it for you. We're here to help you and your child have a wonderful maths learning journey. We believe mathematics is the most wonderful subject, and it has implications on your child's confidence and self-esteem, and we want to make that as good as it can possibly be. Thank you very much for joining, and wish you a wonderful time in this unusual period and some great maths learning. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.